been waiting for really long for him, so have we. So may we please have Mr. Devdutt Patnaik on stage, and he will be in conversation with Johar Sarkar. I will not take any more time.
Hello and good evening. We are lucky to have the one and only Mr. Devdutt Patnaik here. I didn't emphasize that Devdutt alone has done more for the popularization of Indian mythology, culture and history, the mythological history, than any single person. He is immensely popular, and in his own simple language, he has been able to bring forth to all of us stories of myths that we once associated with grandmothers and other older persons. Today, myths of India are a living component within our lives. Now, the book that we'll discuss, or I'll be asking him, he'll be speaking, is his latest Ramayana versus Mahabharata, my playful comparison. I don't know why he wrote my playful comparison, because it's deadly serious. It's simple but deadly serious. Now this one is a very small, slim book, but goes into considerable depth. He has raised 56 issues of comparisons between the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. As we all know, they are two separate legends to us, and often at contradiction to each other. We can bring up these points as we discuss. But he has found 56 issues of similarities between the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and each issue runs into several sub-points. Devdutt has grouped them under 8 different heads, from narratives to war to wisdom. But that's my very short summary of what he said. I'll ask him to expand on this and the reason for bringing out this particular book. So over to you, Devdutt.
Thank you. So the first point which sort of I got excited by this idea, and it developed a long time ago, and is a culmination of my work on Ramayana and Mahabharata. So I've written Ramayana for adults and for children. So Ramayana for adults is called Sita, it's a retelling. Jaya is the retelling of the Mahabharata. For children, Ramayana is, I have retold it as the girl who chose, and the Mahabharata I retold as the boys who fought. So I've done this, and while this was going on, I kept asking this question, and everybody asked me this question, that in the Puranic traditions, why are these two Mahakavyas called Itihasa? They are the only one who are called Itihas. Nothing else is called Itihas. And of course, very people use the Hindi word and think that it means history. But Itihasa, the unique thing about Ramayana and Mahabharata is it is the only two stories where the storyteller is a witness. So Valmiki witnesses the story of Ramayana and Mahabharata, of Ramayana. He witnesses Ram, he witnesses Sita, he witnesses Lava and Kush. Vyasa witnesses the Kauravas and the Pandavas, and therefore when they are writing, they are saying Itihasa. We saw this. Unlike the Purans, which I have heard this. The gods behaved like this and all that. So this brought me attention. Why are these two Mahakavyas given this special importance? And then the second point which came to my attention is that they both are, the text that we have today, the stories may be very old, but the texts that we have today are both written between 200 BCE and 200 AD, which is roughly between the Mauryan and the Gupta period, which is the most interesting period. It's called the age of, between the empire period, when Buddhism was coming up with the Dhammapada and talking about monastic ideals, and propagating it through the Jatak stories and telling about how the purpose of life is to withdraw from society. And at the same time, exactly at the same time, you have the Brahmanical narratives, the Hindu narratives emerging, which are talking Dharma Shastras, which are telling you must get married, you must produce children, you have these rin, you have to repay your ancestral debt, and they are talking about kingship. And then they tell this, they talk about Dhamma, they talk about Dharma. Dhamma is about monastic ideals. Dharma is about social obligations. And then you have Ramayana and Mahabharata as a story complementing the Jatakas. Well, Jataka is talking about compassion and rebirth. This is talking about kingship. And I thought this is fascinating, which led me to writing this book. And I suddenly realized there were so many parallels between them that this was not coincidence. This was a design. It was designed very carefully, of course, over generations, which is unique and unbelievable, to establish Raja Dharma. What is it to be a king? And that is what the purpose of the book is, to show through various structural, I'm a structuralist, I love structuralism. And I structure the book. So the book is structured 56. Why 56? Because Vishnu gets Chappan Bhog. So Chappan Bhog. So it's not, I could have gone through 64, but then that would be a tantric book. So Chausashta Yogini. So for me, 56 is a very Vaishnav number. So Chappan Bhog, and I chose 56, and I divided them based on various factors and various ideas. And that's what the book is about. So the various interesting and amusing comparison, and I want to do it in a light-hearted way, therefore playful, not in an academic way, which is sort of so ponderous.
Now, I'll have to bring in slight bit of academics into this. You know, you just said in the same breath two sentences, both of which are very real to us. One is that very few people in India know that the Ramayana and Mahabharata were composed positively over a period of 400 years. Historians of all shades, Marxist, anti-Marxist, Hindu, everyone has accepted that these two great works took about 400 years to compose parallelly. They were parallelly composed by two groups of scholars. We can call them universities. Oxford and Cambridge of India were producing two great gifts to mankind. Yet, all of us are led to believe that they were written by two sages who took part. So there is a mythology within mythology. All of us sustain a myth. Those of us who know that they took 200 years obviously would believe that no human being could ever be there for 200 years. So therefore, it's a collective work. It's a collective work, and as Devdutt has put it very interestingly, this was the Brahmanical or the Hindu response to Buddhism. To Buddhism. Just to put the historical context clear, Vedic society and post-Vedic society took us from, say, 1200 BC to around 600 BC, around 600 to 700 years. This was challenged in the 6th century by Gautam Buddha and Mahavira. And from that period, we assume there is a different alternate school of thought. With the arrival of Ashoka Maurya, Buddhism gained ground. And so from around 320 BC to around the coming of Christ, we have a period when Brahmanism goes practically underground. We have no evidence of any great work coming up during that period. What he puts it so beautifully is that the Ramayana and Mahabharata are not two stories. They are not two mega stories. I would say they are not even itihas, the way itihas is supposed to be constructed. They are the Hindu response to Buddhist doctrines. If you start with that, Devdutt, tell me, why do we retain this myth about single man author? Single man authors. You know it, I know it, and most historians know it, that they took 400 years to compose. There were literally hundreds of scholars who must have worked on this text to get them together to their present shape. Yet at the same time, we use this symbolic gesture of one Vyasa or one Muni coming up, Valmiki coming up and writing them. What is your guess? Why do we believe it?
You see, it is like our assumption that Buddhism comes only from the Buddha. That's an assumption. Because Buddhism is a very complex body of work, which is not just Theravada Buddhism, there is Mahayana Buddhism, there is Vajrayana Buddhism, there is a Chinese form of Buddhism, there's the Thai form of Buddhism, there's Sri Lankan Buddhism, there's Buddha Ghosha, Nagarjuna, all of whom have composed and contributed to the Buddhist corpus. But when you say Buddhism, in our minds, there is one man who spoke called Buddha, And that is what everybody, and that is the image that you see everywhere of Buddha. And the assumption is everything that we read in Buddhism, including chanting nowadays, which is very popular, and chanting Buddhism and Zen Buddhism came from the Buddha. So this is a common trend. We assume Christianity only comes from Christ. Monotheism comes only from Judaism. History is never so clean. Narratives cleanse things. You see, it's while the Ramayana and Mahabharata, again, you said it's a response to Brahminical thinking, but Buddhism itself is a response to Vedic thinking. So everything is a response to everything else. The current government is a response to the previous government. The previous government is a response to the previous regime. So we are always, in history, we always respond. We always respond to the past and become. So this is karmic. It is cause and consequence, cause and consequence, cause and consequence. And the story, I believe that why are only these two stories called Itihasa? Itihasa, so it happened. There is a man, everybody hears the story that Valmiki witnessed the Ramayana was first narrated to Ram. The Mahabharata was first narrated to the grandson of the Pandavas, Janmajay, a great grandson. So it is a structural similarity, a story that has been passed on. What these 400 years does is use the story to communicate the concept of Dharmashastra. So it is a vehicle, but the vehicle would have existed a long time ago. We don't know how, because that is why we find the same story or plots of similar stories in Jain traditions. You find it in Buddhist traditions. So you have the Shravan Kumar story in Jatakas. You have the story of Dashratha Jataka. You have the Ghota Jataka, which is the Krishna-like story. They're not exactly the same, but you can see the plots are similar, which means the narrative tradition exists, but usko patra banaya hai. It has been turned into a vessel for Dharma Shastras. Therefore, marriage becomes important. So the Ram's marriage is important. Pandava's marriage is important. Vanaprastha becomes important. The concept of Vanaprastha. Dashrath wants to give up the throne and go away. The Pandavas give up the throne and go away. So they're establishing the Dharma Shastra concept, the Varnashrama Dharma concept through the story called the Ramayana and Mahabharata, just as Jatakas, because people wouldn't understand the complex Panchashil and the Eightfold Path. But the moment you tell the Jatak stories, which are basically folk tales and taken by the monks and transformed into stories that talk about Buddhist ideals. So again, as I said, there is this one man origin is a simple way of saying, like the river Ganga doesn't come from Gangotri. It comes from many, many small tributaries and becomes the Ganga. At what point does it become a Ganga? Depends on who is talking about it. But we would like to believe कि ये गंगोत्री में एक गंगोत्री और जहाँ से गंगा निकलती है. Or if you go to Godavari, they'll say Godavari starts from this one point. It's a simple way of thinking. And I think humans love singularity. We love singularity, and even now scientists are trying to find one cause of the world. So Big Bang, we cannot handle simultaneous origin of things, and the science also is moving in that direction, where they're saying that why is it like we believe that everything comes from one cell organisms. We don't realize there could be multiple cells which originated in different parts of the world. So people are challenging this singular idea. I think somewhere we are entrapped in this monotheistic, monocentric view of things, and we need to break away from it.
And I think that's the best explanation. I've asked this question to many scholars. That's the best explanation that I've heard about why, once we know that something comes from different streams, we assume that it's one stream. Let me give you an example from a news that I read a couple of days ago. The Ganga in summer disappears after Prayag. It's just a little stream. But we get the Ganga here at the same time, quite full. The geologists and geographers say that the Ganga literally dies at the Prayag during summer, but the stream of the Ganga that's after Prayag, between Prayag and Ganga Sagar, is replenished by many streams that come in. So to us, what we think is what matters most, not what is real. You mentioned a thing about the Ramayana and Mahabharata being a response, the Hindu response, the Brahmanical response of do not go into this otherworldly thinking, do not leave the world, which is quite the underlying assumption of Buddhism, come back to the family. To that extent, I agree with you, but I can't fully agree. I'll tell you why. You just mentioned about family values. The Ramayana is embedded with family values, even to the point of becoming cruel, to the point of cruelty against a wife, but embedded on the family, on the virtues of monogamy. But when we talk of returning to family values, when you look at the construction of families in Mahabharata, there's nothing that is not done. The main mother figures, Madri, Kunti, even Satyavati. Satyavati has an illicit son from a former this thing. So the question of legitimacy within, or question of what we call middle class morality within the family just does not exist where the Mahabharata is concerned. Everything is permissible.
Yes.
Even Bhishma was told to go and sire his own whatever, daughter like birth. So everything goes on. Whereas in the Ramayana, chastity runs so central that it becomes antithetical to the whole plot. So in a way, we can't find any similarity where that point is concerned.
No, well, I don't, with agreement and disagreement doesn't matter to me because I don't believe in vivad. I believe in samvad. Only vivad, and we should leave it to TV channels to argue. Knowledge doesn't increase through argument. That's a Western notion because they're trying to falsify the other. Indian notion is we add to our knowledge through conversations. So Upanishadic approach and argumentative, with due respect to Amartya Sen, that the argumentative Indian has brought us to this point today. But there's another Indian who has conversations under the tree called the Upanishadic Indian, which he has ignored very conveniently, where you listen to other people and learn from them because they have different experiences. Talking about the Ramayana and Mahabharata, you see, when you speak of family values, I feel, this is my understanding, is that when you use the word family, you're using the current understanding of family, which is highly middle class and prudish. The rishis are not interested in family. They are interested in reproduction. Bachcha paida karo. Whether legitimacy and illegitimacy is a social requirement. But they are worried if everybody becomes a brahmachari and a sannyasi, what will happen to society? When you read the Vinaya Pitaka, there is the first time you get texts which say how horrible women are. They are terrible people. You should keep women away. Normally when you talk of misogyny, people refer to Ramayana. They never refer to Buddhism. And yet Vinaya Pitaka, which is the discipline for monks, repeatedly tells how horrifying and dangerous women are and they must be kept away. Because you are trying to create a monastic order. Although nuns, Buddhism is famous for creating the nunnery. The first time the nuns.
With a lot of reluctance.
With a lot of reluctance.
With a lot of reluctance.
But he did. But there are more rules for women than for men.
Yes.
So women are seen in the monastic tradition across India. Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, in the monastic tradition, even today we talk about it, men are superior to women. You have to have a male body in order to gain nirvana, kaivalya, moksha. Male body is important. Therefore, to get a male body, I need children and therefore I need reproduction. So the monastic order is not allowing for reproduction. So another group is saying reproduction is important. So when you have Agastya Muni doing tapasya, you have all the stories of ancestors bothering them, saying that produce children, produce children, produce children. They're not saying get married. They're saying produce children. So as you know the difference between the two, right?
I hope so.
So our scriptures are extremely modern. They're not meant for politicians who are not modern. No? Our politicians belong to another age. But our rishis are extremely modern. They are like, bacche paida karo because dunya ki kya hoga? So they are interested in children. They are not interested in marriage and legitimacy. Ramayana and Mahabharata are struggling with legitimacy and inheritance. That is the issue. That is why there are property disputes. They are bringing the other factor into it. The rishis are least bothered about. That's why they always have apsaras coming and the child being thrown on the ground. The apsara doesn't raise the child. In the Rigved, Urvashi just walks away from her family. And the Gritachi, when you look at the apsaras, they are actually talking about women who say that this maternal instinct is not for us.
Ganga.
Yeah, Ganga just kills her babies.
Just leaves Bhishma.
And there are many stories where they're saying, "Bacha, tum sambhalo na, why can't you? You're a parent. Go take care of him." So these kind of stories we don't want to tell our children. No, oh my God, how mothers have to have maternal instinct. Apsaras have no maternal instinct, and Ganga embodies that.
Tell them the story of one Apsara who cursed Bhishma.
Well, Apsara, no, it's Amba. Amba. So
no, I'm not talking of Amba. I'm talking of Urvashi.
Urvashi curses Arjun. No, there she is like she wants to have sex with him. She doesn't want to have children with him. Now we are going to another. I think we have a family crowd over here. So let us keep it to. Once I said Apsara, Mr. Sarkar got very excited. Let's come back to Sati and Savitri.
Okay.
So what happens
if
is.
you come back to the mother of Mother Satyavati.
So
she
what you
bargained so much.
So bargain. So you're suddenly seeing power. You are seeing inheritance. And when does patriarchy come in? Patriarchy is about property. Property is about inheritance. Inheritance becomes about ये मेरा बच्चा है कि मेरा बच्चा नहीं है. मेरा पैसा मैं अपने बच्चे को दूंगा, दूसरे को नहीं दूंगा. So how do I know this child is mine? So this becomes a huge issue. Therefore, it's very interesting. In the Ramayana, Sita is found in the earth. Her father is Janak. Janak, and I keep wondering why does Valmiki choose the name Janak? Because Janak doesn't have a role to play really. But you realize Janak is associated with Upanishads. The most transcendental thinking. So while Dashrath is doing a yajna for getting 4 sons, Janak picks up the daughter from the earth and says, she's my daughter. And there is no real reference to Janak's son. He comes from later traditions, but really it is, he's happy with the daughter. And there is no issue. And therefore it is showing Raja Janak is being positioned with Dashrath. And it's not told explicitly, but we can see the structural difference between the two. There is a structural difference. And we are seeing for example, when you read the Mahabharata, you see Ganga has complete freedom in marriage. Satyavati has lesser freedom. Compared to Ganga, just kills her babies and walks away. Satyavati manages to get children somehow, but she has more power. The next generation of Gandhari and Kunti have lesser, of Amba, Ambika have lesser power. They are being forced to have sex with another person. Although they are widows. Satyavati is doing it. Satyavati, a woman, is doing it. So you're seeing with generations, the power is going away. Amba, Ambalika, Ambika, and then you see Gandhari blindfolding herself. Madri doing Sati.
And Gandhari didn't need any assistance to produce 100.
Let's not go to that zone. Yes. Leave that to the politicians. They know better science than anybody else. Yeah. I believe Indian Institute of Science should be run by them. So, but for talking about, so you see women's power coming down, and chastity is an extremely, celibacy for men and chastity for women is a very interesting concept. Ram is the only Ekam Patni Vrata. Ram is Ekam Patni Vrata. No other character is Ekam Patni Vrata. No other character in mythology is an Ekam Patni Vrata other than Ram. And you see the tension in his relationship with his wife. Chastity in Ramayana becomes so important because you're talking about legitimacy, inheritance rights. And that is what these scriptures are talking about, because they are asking fundamental questions. They're saying that does it really matter? Does it really matter? And
that's precisely the point. You see, the Mahabharata takes it to one extreme where love, sex and dhoka is okay. The Ramayana takes it to the other extreme, that if a dhobi talks about your wife not being faithful, or even raises a doubt, you banish her. So there are two extremes. What I was trying to tell you, Devdutt, was basically that while there are a lot of similarities that you have managed to get together, in fact, it's quite an eye-opener, the amount of similarities you brought in, there are two discourses that run parallel where the family is concerned. Property is secondary in the Ramayana. You take away, you're my brother, you look after it. It doesn't matter. whereas property becomes central in the Mahabharata. Inheritance, property, this becomes central. So there are, the options, as I put it, different options available.
But I'll correct you over there. You see, because you're seeing Ramayana is only the story of Ayodhya. When you go to Kishkinda, it's a property dispute. Vali and Sugriva are fighting over property. Kishkinda, they are supposed to share the kingdom. And then when you go to Lanka, it is again a property dispute because Kuber has built the city. So it's about fight of brothers. See, that is what the Mahabharata, that's why we, especially in the Mahabharata, which is a bigger epic, you have this whole concept of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. People think it's a nice concept. It is saying the whole world is a family. A family is made of brothers and brothers kill each other for money. As we know, even in the 20th century.
Yes.
It's there in every news. It's there in every political party. Brothers kill each other over money. This is the meaning of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. If the world is my family, which means we will fight over property.
Except my family.
No. The world is family.
My family
and therefore, if you and I are family, who owns the land? You or me? And that is where fight starts because we both assume it is my property.
Correct.
So this is the meaning. It is not a romantic notion of that I take care of my family. It is a fight for property. It only happens in a family. Na? If you're a stranger, I will just kill you. That is the problem of Arjun in Mahabharata, where he says, how can I kill my family members? You have been killing people all your life.
All your life.
So basically, I can shoot people who I consider the other. Parapurusha. Parajiva. Which is exactly how a parliament functions, right? Apne or paraye. See, what is apna and what is paraya it's very interesting because that is why it is called Sanatan. Timeless. How do you delegitimize, dehumanize a person? You tell your brother, ye tu mera bhai nahi hai. This is what Ravan does to Vibhishana. This is what Ravan does to Kuber. This is what Vali does to Sugriv. And in a way, Sugriv does to Vali, and Ram stops it by saying, Angad, the son of Vali, will be your heir.
Correct.
So this, that your enemy's son shall be your heir, is an important narrative. Because Angad's father is killed by Sugriv. So these details we don't catch. And I love to catch these details. That your enemy's son shall, and that is what Bharat and Ram are representing a kind of an ideal because they're yogis. They are not attached to anything, including the wife. The danger of having a yogi is being presented because I am not attached to the kingdom. I am not attached to the wife.
Can I go and tell that to my wife that I am not attached to
She will make you a bhogi. In 1 minute, this is the land of Kali and she dances on Shiva. So.
That part we know. Listen, now coming back to a bit of the beyond the story, to the purpose of these two epics. If there have been any instrument of uniting Indians and India, I don't think there has never been any bigger Bharat Jodo paradigm than these two myths. Both of these myths are associated with places.
Yes.
Literally hundreds and thousands of places in India identify themselves directly with the myth. That the Pandavas came here, that the rulers came here. How do you take that role, the resultant role of the two, which explains the longevity of these two myths?
So I think, many people, especially nowadays, because lots of people are writing novels on the Ramayana and Mahabharata, they look at Ramayana and Mahabharata as Shakespeare's plays. Shakespeare's plays, while beautiful and wonderful to read, is not establishing British society or European society. It is just a reflection on human condition. These epics are not for that purpose. Their recitation is to establish kingship. Raja. What is the meaning of a Raja? What is the meaning of a Yajaman? What is a family? What is a kingdom? Rajya kya hai? Gan kya hai? So the purpose is related to royalty. Therefore, Dhamma, Dharma. I keep saying that. And that is the purpose. And therefore, across India, whoever wanted to be a king would want the legitimization happening through Ramayana and Mahabharata. Therefore, you'll in the Puranic traditions, which is in the Middle Ages, early days they would do Ashwamedha Yajna. That is very early days. But really, the last Ashwamedha is roughly done around the Gupta times. But legitimacy comes by being identified either with the Surya Vansh or with the Chandra Vansh. Surya Vansh means Ramayana. Chandra Vansh means Mahabharata. So Surya Vansh, Agni Kula, Surya Kul, there was a Surya Kul kise aaye hain. And you have the Surya temple. And Chandra Vansh becomes important. So you have Chandelas, you have the Yadav kings of Karnataka. So there are so many kings, and their legitimacy comes through the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So the power of Ramayana and Mahabharata is in not only talking about power, but being the vehicle through which power structures were established in India. And it is something that we know. Of course, when you talk about power structures in India, everybody will talk about, Ramayana mein there is how Shudras are killed and there is oppression. But Brahmins are also killed. In Ramayana, Ravan is killed. He is Brahmahatya because he's a Brahmin. In the Mahabharata, Dronacharya is killed. He's a Brahmin. So Brahmahatya. Both books, which are Kshatriya epics, talk of Brahmahatya. And it's something that people don't realize. If these are Brahminical narratives which tell you how a Ravan, who is a Brahmin, is being killed because he's not a good king. Dronacharya is being beheaded because he's not a good teacher. They are not following dharma. What is dharma? Dharma is when ahankar is abandoned. And when ahankar is abandoned, Rajniti ends and Raj Dharma starts. You think of the kingdom first, not of the king first. Ravan is first thinking of himself, then Lanka. Ram is thinking of Ayodhya first, then himself.
And the Dhobi in between.
It is, Dhobi is Ayodhya. Dhobi is more important than my happiness. His fake news matters more because than my life.
You just mentioned about Ashwamedha Yagga. Now, the Ashwamedha Yagga was taken as legitimizing the claim for an expanded throne.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
And you just said there's been no more claims to the throne.
Yes.
Because Ashwamedha Yagga is much too old.
Yes.
We just had one in Calcutta today. Come on. We, moving on to the central issue that I mentioned, you are very right in the sense that this amount of theocratic legitimacy has been innate within the Indian system, political system. My submission was a little broader. I take the Mahabharata and Ramayana to be two large Magna Cartas of India, the treaties of India. You see, so many different people, so many different nationalities. We have 24 languages. We have 2 states within the same language, like in Andhra and Telangana. But otherwise, there are 24 distinct national groups that were hardly ever united together except in brief interregnums. What held the people? The total amount of time in which all the nationalities in India were never united together. The Kerala part was left out, many other parts. What brought India together emotionally would be identification or the acceptance of the values of Ramayana and Mahabharata.
Yes. So, united word, we have to be very careful because the Western world, everything is seen from a physical point of view. In fact, today there's a beautiful article on Aeon. That's the problem of science is its radical materialism, and everything is reduced to physics. They don't care for biology, and they definitely don't care for psychology. They actually see psychology as rubbish and physics as real. You also use the word that this is real, the geology is real, and the perception of Ganga is false, where awareness, perception, consciousness, imagination is rejected outright by old scientists, the new scientists don't accept this definition of science as physicality. And therefore, uniting India, should we talk at a political level?
I said emotionally.
Or at a psychological level. Okay. Now, as a mythologist, I will look at it at a psychological level. And what unites the subcontinent of India is the belief in rebirth. Karma. This idea, the West believes in judgment day. God is a judge. Hindus, Buddhists, Jains don't believe God is a judge. This concept doesn't exist. Judgment day doesn't exist. The idea of rebirth is the reason why so many religions could succeed in India, so many schools of thought could. It allows for diversity, which brings me to the case that I don't see Ramayana and Mahabharata as two separate epics. They are two chapters of one epic called Vishnu Purana. You see, Brahma, and when you have to understand the Hindu superstructure, which emerges much later in concrete terms, in around 1500 years ago, where Brahma is delegitimized because Brahma's children are fighting each other over property. Brahma, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, he is creating that family. He is the Pitamaha of the family which is quarreling. Shiva is the destroyer because he said, I don't want property. He's the monk. He's the archetypal monk. He's the Shramana traditions. He is the Buddhist, Jain, the monastic traditions. Until the Devi, the goddess, brings him into the marriage fold. And then you have between them Vishnu, who is associated with Dharma. And Dharma then manifests in two, it's like a bell curve, right? It's a bell curve. In a relationship, at one level, we desire someone who will be eternally faithful to us. At another level, we think the most modern marriage is an open marriage where we can sleep around with anyone else, but we are still connected with each other. And this bell curve is exactly what the Ramayana and Mahabharata talk about, because Ramayana talks about a rule following Maryada Purushottam Ram. Mahabharata focuses on rule breaking. It talks about Leela Purushottam Krishna. And this creates a spectrum. And the spectrum is connected through the idea of rebirth, because Ram is reborn as Krishna. And stories of rebirth are very important in the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Hanuman connects the two because he's Chiranjeevi. Parshuram connects the two because he's Chiranjeevi. Repeatedly, Krishna refers to Ram. And that in my past life, and Ram keeps referring, at least in the later traditions, that in my next life I will be this. Thus, rebirth connects the two extremes and allows for two epics to become one. In the same way, rebirth allows 24 different nationalities to become one. Because, and this is something we don't know, karma theory is what defines India. Everything in India is about karma. And karma is a complex idea. When people say karma is as you sow, so you reap, that's a Christian idea. Christian idea, that comes from the lines from the Bible. But the Hindu idea is, fal ki chinta mat karo. You don't know what is going to sprout. So Krishna does dharma sthapana, but gets Gandhari's curse. Ram establishes Ram Rajya, but is separated from his wife and children. So we have to ask ourselves, Ram Rajya Dharma, what is the cost? What is the cost and consequence? And that is why Dharma becomes sukshma, complicated. It is not a simple thing.
I fully admit it's complicated. At the same time, the idea that I was throwing up is that it lent, the two myths lent themselves to adaptation.
Yes.
There are 5 Kishkindas in India, at least my count.
Yeah.
There are 20 Manipurs. 20 places claim to be Manipur, where Chitrangada was. So, it allowed a certain amount of spatial or geographical emotional linkage.
Yes.
When somebody goes to Chitrakoot, he feels that this is the same Chitrakoot where Bhagwan Ram came.
Yes.
The people of Chitrakoot were originally even now in one of the most backward regions of India, are emotionally linked to the rest of India through this imagination that Ramayana and Mahabharata. I was looking at the purpose, the historical purpose, the historical utility that they served.
Well, see, when you talk about purposes, whose purpose? So I see the purpose as, so there are two parts to your question, really. One is the dharma concept spreading.
Yes.
So the idea of dharma reaching even Thailand and Cambodia, Ramayana Mahabharata goes there to establish kingship. The moment it comes to a king, now he becomes Vishnu. he becomes the preserver of society.
Yes.
He is the preserver, not the creator, not the
Yeah.
destroyer. He is not the monk. He is not the one who's attached to property and only thinks of his family, but thinks of other people. Detachment. So Vishnu. And when I become Vishnu, then my land becomes Vaikuntha. And therefore, Ayodhya comes to my land. And I don't want Hastinapur around. I don't want the division of property. I want Ayodhya where everybody is a brother. And therefore, these narratives become localized. So in Kerala, you have the Ramayana month where everybody reads the Ramayana.
Adhyatam,
So the whole month Ram is being narrated. But we know that this practice is about 500 years old, 600 years old, 800 years old. Not more than that. But today, if you ask there in Kerala, they'll say for thousands and thousands of years. Because
That's it. That is the special nature of Indians to push back things into eternity.
No. Not just-
Prachina. You
No, but
ask anything is Prachin. Prachin could be 100 years, Prachin could be a million years. The word Prachin
yeah.
in India is
But
very,
it's not
very-
just India. You see, I mean, Indians, yes, of course. But everyone believes their religion came at the birth of time. So Genesis, so
Historically,
Christianity comes. See, historians, nowadays, historians, only politicians are historians. Let's be very clear. I'm sorry.
of politicians.
It is, historians exist only in the parliament, nowhere else. I mean, scientists, historians,
History
geologists,
Congress,
astronomers, only politicians. I'm sorry. This is a new world order. Let's
We
accept it.
had an overdose of politicians today. So Calcutta is still recovering from it.
No, so the point being, the point is, historically, if you tell, for example, Islam, we know starts in 6th century AD. But if you in Islam, it will be said that Islam starts when the world began.
Yes, cosmogony.
Cosmogony. So this is cosmogony. So people believe कि ये सनातन है, is cosmogony. When is Buddha born? You ask a Buddhist, he'll say Buddha has always been around.
Always been. I'll
So
bring
we
you
should
to
be a little kind to Indians.
One issue about the same theme about the unification or the emotional integration of India, whichever way you put it, is the regional interpretations. We have hundreds and hundreds of regional interpretations. I was looking for many years for what we call a regional translation, a translation of Valmiki Ramayana into something. It's almost impossible to find because they are all transcreations.
Yes. See the word anuvad.
Anuva.
Anuvad is, if you break the word, doesn't mean translation. See, translation
Transcreation.
it's transcreation.
Transcreation.
I build from you. That's what I say, samvad.
Sangvad.
Not vivad. See, in vivad, you are continuously seeking singularity. In samavad, you're creating plurality. I take a little bit of your thing. It is like Chinese, Indian Chinese. We take the Chinese noodles and make it ours. ये हमारा है.
And the Chinese refuse to accept it as
Yeah, a potato is Indian.
Uh-huh.
We will not accept that samosa came from Turkey and potato came from South America.
No one
वो
accepts.
प्राचीन साल में ऋषियों ने बनाया था समोसा. So now you
Who
don't.
told you this? Mitro.
No. The parliament tells us the truth. Let's accept it. That is why they say repeatedly they keep saying Satyameva Jayate.
We should have gone to the to the science congress. No, I was saying that dekho, you look at
Oh,
three
it's called Comic-Con nowadays.
Comic-Con. Three regional versions. We have the 14th century Dondi Ramayana. We have Ramakotha of Assam. We have Krittivasa's Ramayana, 1 century after Odisha. So that's a point the Bengalis wouldn't admit.
No.
100 years after. So
Before or after Rajgullah?
Before and after. So these three Ramayans, if you look at these three, none of them tally with Valmiki's Ramayana. They are their own retelling. What I'm trying to say is that at some point of time, our scholars and writers and interpreters, lawmakers, if I may use the broad term, utilize the core material of Mahabharata, of Ramayana, to refabricate in their own terms the reality of the region, the questions that were burning in the region, and refashion it as Tammam Ramayana of Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
So
But
each
you see,
rendering,
the-
this flexibility, you can't render, let us say, the Bible into so many regional variations where regional characters come out from, say, Malaysia
Yeah.
to populate the Bible. Here, regional characters can come out
And
and
populate.
populate the
You see,
epic.
that is the reason is because if you see in the Jain, there is a very famous story of the Jain Mahabharata, and the Jain Ramayana was being narrated by a Jain monk. In the Jain Ramayana, Ram doesn't kill Ravan. In the Jain Mahabharata, the battle is between Krishna and Jarasandha. There is no Pandav Kauravas play a very little role, and Draupadi is not polygamous. It's a mistake made by Hindus according to the Jains. So these are the ideas, and apparently a king went to the Jain Muni and said that how can you say this Ramayana? And then he tells about, there are many kalpas and many yugas, or har yug mein ek alag Ramayana hota hai. And the king was satisfied with the explanation,
Bas.
which means rebirth. We explain, if you don't have the concept of rebirth, you cannot explain diversity. See, the West does not understand diversity. They keep using the word diversity, diversity, diversity until immigrants come to their house. Then suddenly Brexit will happen. Suddenly that will happen. Until that time, diversity, diversity, diversity. Now everybody make America great again and all that. Because abhi aa gaya na ghar ko. Diversity is what? That is what we are getting offended when they are talking about the Rohingya crisis and infiltration from Bangladesh. These are questions which are real questions. But Indians seem to have no issue with it because it is, there are some people who scream and shout, but somewhere along the line we integrate. The Shakas came, the Greeks came, the Pallavas came, the Parthians came, the...
Aryans didn't come.
No.
Aryans were born here. Yes.
Well, the
You and
moment
I will...
See, the moment you start speaking Sanskrit, you become Arya.
Yeah.
So I am not an Arya because I don't speak Sanskrit. But the thing is, to be an Aryan, you just have to speak Sanskrit. That's as simple. So most of the Aryans right now are in Chicago. And New Jersey, and and they've given up Indian passports because new Aryans have to have an American passport. So but that's beside the point. The point is, ideas have kept coming to India, and I believe, this is my hypothesis, it is the rebirth narrative, the rebirth meme, which allows us to accept so many things. Therefore, Islam in India was very different. Islam in the Mughal court was not what is practiced in Saudi Arabia. Mughal court's Islam, Lucknow's Islam, Hyderabad's Islam was very different. The Tawaif culture flourished. You had arts, poetry, music, song and dance, which is haram.
The musical tradition.
The musical tradition
defines in
in Saudi Arabia, it's haram. Other than tribal dance, they don't allow it. No. So we don't understand that Islam in India transformed into something totally different. In Malaysia, in Indonesia, it transformed because they were influenced before this by the Indian tradition. So
Ram
Katha tradition, the Buddhist traditions, which is also karmic, karma. So we don't understand the inherent non-violence is embedded in karma concept. You cannot have one life. If there is only one life, then diversity, there is no room for diversity. Then you will talk equality. Diversity and equality are opposites of each other. One God, one life, equality. Many gods, many lives, diversity.
Much more of flexibility.
So flexibility. But hilti dulti cheez किसी को पसंद नहीं है ना. We want everybody to be straight, not queer. सबको सीधा कर देंगे हम लोग.
सबको.
बांके बिहारी जी हमको पसंद नहीं है. अरे बट बांके बिहारी जी, he is fluid. छोड़ दो. शांति से राम के, because Ram is so austere and rigid, Krishna is required. बांके बिहारी जी, he will play the flute and do the Tribhanga position like a dancer. But he is a Purushottama, complete man. His masculinity is not based on mustaches and oppressing women. He will dance with women, sing with women, wear alta, wear a plait, wear kajal.
Arjun is the best example.
So, no, Arjun is not able to understand what Krishna is trying to communicate. We keep forgetting. We think that he understands the Gita. But please remember, there's something called Anugita. After the Mahabharata war, Arjun goes back to Krishna and says, Vapis samjhao, please, summary.
Double.
Thoda summary do. And Krishna really loses his temper. They said like, oh my God, in that moment of yogic realization, I showed you so many things. 700 verses. 18 chapters. And the Anugita has 36 chapters. Double number of... Because, see, this is what everybody assumes at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjun is enlightened. ask any teacher what happens after the semester ends. So this assumption is spread by people who don't really read the Mahabharata. When you read the Mahabharata, you realize Arjun को कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है. वो रही अच्छा प्रभु तू तो बड़ा आदमी है, तू जो बोलेगा मैं करेगा. Because the complexity of the narrative, he's trying to explain Sukshmata to Arjun. But Arjun likes to play with the bow, and he loves his Chitrangada, and his Ulupi, and his Subhadra, and his Draupadi. He shares Draupadi with his brothers. So Arjun ko Krishna dekh raha hai, and he's like, he doesn't understand Purushottama. Krishna is Purushottam, but look at the visualization of Krishna. He is completely feminine. He is in Tribhanga position, he's singing, he's dancing, and he's on the chariot at the same time. It's not toxic masculinity. What we call toxic masculinity. It is, he dances with the Gopikas, he's with Yashoda. Ram cannot be seen in those forms. You can't assume.
You can't imagine.
You can't imagine. But both are forms of Vishnu. Therefore, South Indians call their children Ramakrishna. As per convenience.
This is a man ki baat.
Because, see, I'm glad you remembered Hanuman, but...
Man ki baat Hanuman. Achha, chalo.
I thought he said monkey baat. Hanuman, Satyavachan. So, this idea is something which is central to the scriptures. And I keep telling people, Ram is Maryada Purushottam. Krishna is Leela. Neither of them is complete. Although people, if you go to Krishna Bhaktas, they'll say Purna Purusha. Everybody wants their God to be Purna. But Ram is the two spectrum, as you said, the Ramayana on one hand and Mahabharata on the other. And the two are coming from Vishnu Puran. And Vishnu Puran makes no sense unless you read Shiva Puran. Shiva Puran makes no sense unless you read about Shakti and the Tantric traditions. So all this is connected. The Samsara traditions make no sense without the Shramana traditions. So these books have to be seen in context, not in isolation like a Shakespeare's play, which is what many authors do. And I keep seeing a lot of fiction writers writing it, and I'm like, while it's great. And nowadays novelists like to be judges, right? They're judging Ram all the time, like the god as
There's
judge.
one on Sita also.
Sita, Draupadi, Radha, everything is there. The thing is, the writer, the novelist becomes a judge. And then I realize, God as judge comes from the Christian tradition. Kayamat, we are judging Ram. But this is karma. This is not judgment. This is action-reaction. Surpanakha nose is cut. After that, Ram has no happiness. The moment Surpanakha's nose is cut, Ramayana becomes a tragedy. That is karma.
Just one nose.
One nose of a woman.
One nose of one woman.
And the whole of Ramayana happens.
Imagine.
And what happens in Mahabharata? You undo the hair of Draupadi. Finished.
No tying up.
And the whole Vansha, Kuru Vansha is destroyed. So in both they are talking about toxic masculinity.
Yes.
And we don't realize that they are talking about ideas in these books. We would like to, they are oppressive, Brahminical narratives. Arre, padha nahi hai. You have not read the books. These are books which talk about Brahmins being beheaded. These are books where men who abuse women are suffering. But we would like to believe that, all these feminism is a modern idea. No, Sita's narratives are feminist. She's asking equality. She says, I will not come back to your land. She makes 5 choices in the Ramayana. Nobody wants to know about it. Why? Because then it destroys our image of traditional Indian woman. But Sita makes 5 choices. She's 5 choices in the Ramayana. Of course, if you want to know it, please buy my book. I can hear it. Bolo.
And you're going to sign them.
So,
No.
this is what I keep saying. We are conditioned to read Ramayana and Mahabharata in this pathetic, colonial, Victorian, Marxist way, which is outdated. It is so 19th century. Come to the 21st century, girl.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I guess we have spent an hour and we need to roll up. Now, tell me, do you believe that each character in Ramayana and Mahabharata, I'm talking the central characters, we take Draupadi, Sita and others, they were in a way to us what we will call the discourse and the denial. Whether you're part of the discourse even if you deny. The Ramayana and Mahabharata offers to you a central character, Sita.
Yes.
But it's for us to accept, to debate about whether this Sita is the real Sita or the Sita has been portrayed in a different light. This flexibility, utter flexibility, there's been a air dropping, not on us. This utter flexibility is what differentiates the Indian epics. In fact, I have been arguing that we should not call them epics because epics have they're a very limited purpose.
Yes.
They are more of what we call the national texts,
Yes.
the national Magna Cartas, as I keep copying. So, what do you say about that? The flexibility to end this.
So, I think Banke Bihari ji is my visualization for flexibility. Because for me, human thought is flexible. And Indians have always talked about flexibility, compromise, not rigidity. And rigidity is always frowned upon because nature is not rigid. Nature keeps playing with itself, flirting with itself, experimenting, making mistakes. If you look at how nature works, it is violent, it is sexual, it is horrific, it is beautiful. Indian traditions are born of natural conversations with nature, and we have always had realizations and this indexing approach that there is one truth. Even science today has this notion, because science as we know today emerges in Christian society, in Europe, and therefore the obsession with one truth, until quantum physics came along and just shook everybody. This notion of physical things, even today, I keep telling people, everybody loves Yuval Harari, but it's such a linear narrative. He just can't handle diversity, he can't handle multiple directions. It's linear. It's always linear. It is, you delegitimize hunter-gathering societies as if they are the past. No, the Jarwa who are living in Andamans are not the past. It is their present. Who are you to tell that they are the past? Because you have a cell phone and mobile phone. This is a classical Western mind at work. Indians wouldn't, a traditional enlightened Indian, let's clarify that. If you are raised in the truly Sanatan tradition, you will work towards including people in your thali. So you have a thali where everybody's dish is allowed. Your food is allowed, my food is. If you don't want to eat it, you can keep it outside. But it will be served to everyone. And then you can customize it by mixing it. And eat what you want. It doesn't give you the authority to tell what the other person's thali mein kya hona chahiye. But now what we have become, we are becoming Abrahamic. We are becoming indexing.
Semitic.
So we want Hinduism ka rules batao. Are rules hai hi nahi. Aise kaise ho sakta hai? And I realize the left, the extreme left and the extreme right think exactly in the same way. That is why Indian says dunya goal hai. If you go too much to the left, you come to the right.
That's a good.
And every time, I love to play these games. I just have to use words like intersectionality, and then the left will get upset. And then the moment you use words like Bharat Mata, then the right will get upset. And they're like, it's so easy to upset them, right? Because they're interested only in Vivad, not in Samvad. Flexibility comes from Samvad. Plurality comes from Samvad. And the parliament will only work when there is Samvad, not Vivad.
So with this, we'll come to the end of this session. I would like to thank Devdutt for an excellent performance and like to round off the discussion by saying that he has hit upon one of the most fundamental truths about ancient India and to an extent the Hinduism that we are not ashamed of owning up. That it remains basically a management of contradictions. India is a management of contradictions, and as long as we allow a certain degree of flexibility, a certain plurality, this great country would survive and prosper. Thank you very much, Devdutt. Excellent. Thank you. I don't know. Huh? Who's here from the rules of the game?
Are we allowed a Q&A? Are we
Any
allowed
questions
Q&A?
and answers allowed? Excellent. So, those who are willing to ask him,
If somebody can manage that, we can't see anybody. So, okay. So whoever holds the mic, I'm sorry, we can't see all. So whoever gets the mic, I'm sorry.
Hello, sir. I'm here. Sir, I just want to ask you a very sleek question. Okay, since we had a discourse of 1 hour, so in one point, can you just tell one similarity and one dissimilarity between Abraham and Yayati? Because between Abraham and Yayati, because we were trying to address this problem of the East and West. So if you take Abraham as a metaphor and Yayati as a metaphor, what will be the one prime similarity and one prime dissimilarity?
No, that's a very good question. I will write that book in 2021.
Sir, good evening, sir. Over here, to your right. Sir, my question is that when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to South, there was one Brahmin who was crying that Mata Sita being abducted by Ravan. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that the Ravan abducted the Maya Sita. The original Sita was at that time was staying with Agni Deva. After that, when Lord Ram accepted from Agni Dev, then Maya Sita was desiring to get back to Lord Ram. But Lord Ram didn't accept that. And it was said that that Maya Sita came in the form of Draupadi in Mahabharata. So what would be your stand in that? That Lord Ram, being the Maryada Purushottam, did not accept a figure of illusion, but Lord Krishna, being the Leela Purushottam, is
that is Chaitanya
set up
Mahaprabhu's
with
story,
up.
na?
Yes.
That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's story.
Yeah.
Respect it. Why do you have to become a judge and say is it right or wrong? वो उनकी कथा है ना.
But it was not proved properly. That is
Arey,
why.
proof again. You're going to Judgment Day. See, we are obsessed with judging. God as judge, Judgment Day. This argument, right, wrong. Supreme Court will decide what is abusive language on coffee shows. Careful. Everything can't be decided by a third party. This judgment as the central theme is a Western concept. Upanishad is an Indian concept. बातचीत करके solve करो problem. मार के नहीं. This is a very Indian approach. This easy right, prove it. अरे Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told a story in a particular context for a particular reason to resolve the agony of a person. Observe it in context. Why do you want to decontextualize it and make it right or wrong, true or not true? It's a very dangerous game that we are playing, and this is a game that is really tearing our country apart. Sometimes if you want to maintain relationships in life, don't judge. Yeah?
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Patnaik. Thank you so this side. Center. Thank you so much for coming here. Previously on Devlok with Devdutt Patnaik, you made an excellent explanation of Adi Shankara's Jagat Mithya Brahma Satyam. In light of that remark, what do you make of the Sabarimala dispute, and is there any solution at all to that dispute?
Sabarimala dispute. See, truth is only known to the parliament, as we have, they know everything. So let them decide. Life change always happens through extreme violence across the world. Women got their rights, and the way this whole idea of the women's equality happens only in the 20th and 21st century. But people have been trying it from Ramayana and Mahabharata times. So things don't happen overnight. Some are violent, some are non-violent, some are compromised, some are easy, some are in the spotlight, some are not in the spotlight. But the world is changing, no? The world is changing. 1,000 years ago, what was Sabarimala? Nobody knows. 2,000 years ago, what was Sabarimala? We don't know. But we have assumed Prachin, sab Prachin hai. So, 1,000 years later, where will the parliament be? Who knows? So, this assumption ki now only we have to solve the issue. Tension kya le raha hai? This one life discourse. In my lifetime, all the problems of the world have to come to an end. It won't. Let me clarify. I have read the Shastras. You know, even when you die, the world will be full of problems, just as it was when you began. Yeah?
Uh, Good evening, sir. Just before your conversation, there was this play going on about Chitrangada, and me and my friends were having this discussion that Chitrangada transforms herself into a princess, not the warrior princess, into a princess for a man. Now, we are having very different views about it. So, is that women empowerment in your view?
See, Shiva was a hermit. He did not want to marry. Kali comes and tells, nahi, nahi, shadi karo. And makes him into Gauri Shankar. Is that masculine empowerment? See, we should be very careful of how we read stories. This story of Chitrangada is written, from what I know, by Rabindranath Tagore. And he belonged to a particular time, and he is dealing with issues of masculinity, femininity in his time. If you read Rabindranath Tagore's literature, you realize at one level he wants women to be educated and he wants women to be progressive. But when you read Gaure Baire, when you read Chokher Bali, you can sense a discomfort with educated and powerful women. So these are complex. I mean, I'm sure there's a Tagore scholar here who has read all his works, and they'll be a better judge. They'll be able to explain you better. These are ideas which are emerging at that time. And when he's writing Chitrangada, through Chitrangada, he is trying to explore in the 19th century and early 20th century ideas of feminism, women's empowerment, and you can see the struggle of such a wise man. It's not easy, because no change is easy. He is struggling because he's living in this body, he's living with his family members, his aunts, his women in the family, and he's asking these fundamental questions. When the first time I saw the film Gaure Baire, I mean, I've not read his work, but I've seen the films, and so I have a very limited knowledge. But I said, oh my God, you can see the tension. The tension of education, women being educated. The first scene when the lady walks out of the Antapura, or when you have this read Chokher Bali and the educated woman and the widow, and and you can see how much Rabindranath Tagore is struggling with the idea of equality, gender, at a time when nobody thought about these things. So he was a pioneer at that level. So understand these stories from the context in Jivide. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's story has to be understood from a 14th and 15th century point of view. Rabindranath Tagore's writings have to be understood from a 19th century point of view. Vivekananda's writings have to be, remember Vivekananda passed away in 1902. So his writings are based on that period. We have to contextualize. Devdutt Patnaik belongs to 21st century. I will talk a 21st century language. I'm sure 100 years later somebody will say Devdutt Patnaik was the greatest idiot ever. Because 100 years later new ideas will emerge. So we have to see things in context. So Chitrangada's story, don't look at the truth. That is a Judeo-Christian Abrahamic concept. There is a truth. Ekam Satya. Many truths. Aneka Satya. So this is the approach. So this is a great story. Chitrangada, and ultimately, of course, Arjun wants the masculine warrior princess, which is interesting because I can do a lot of Freudian psychoanalysis there. And not all of it is pleasant, depending on who you are.
Last question down there. Yes.
Good evening, sir. My question to you is, considering that we have been discussing the similarities and differences between Mahabharata and Ramayana, I would like to ask you, don't you think the primary difference of God as a presentation of God in Mahabharata as a guiding force and in Ramayana as the story of God himself?
Well, Ram doesn't know he is God. So it is the story of God who knows who is God and God who doesn't know who is God. So Krishna is fully aware that he is God. Ram doesn't know he is God. So Agni, Valmiki all appear in front of him in the last and say, you are Vishnu. How can you behave like this? You are Vishnu. And they're telling him to rise because he's rejecting Sita. And that's the time Agni comes and says, but you are Vishnu and she's Lakshmi. So the higher morality is coming from God. The lower morality is coming from human. And the conflict is between the human and the divine. Because the divine looks at a reproductive level. The human looks at legitimacy, property, marriage, family values, and all those things which some people talk about. But that has to be. So, of course, if you want to know more differences, this book costs 295 rupees, available with discount, and I'll sign it. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patnaik and Mr. Sarkar. The books are available for signing, but the better part, the author is available for signing right here. And thank you all for being here. Our next session is going to start in a few moments. It's Mr. Ravish Kumar in conversation with Ms. Urvashi Butalia, speaking truth to power.